Hit the record button for this Kirblog so I can tell you all how the series of Tome was created on this day in the fall. It is November 10th, 2015, and 4 years ago tomorrow is when the first episode of Tome, Terrain of Magical Expertise, this web series that I've spent all this time on, was released to newgrounds.com. And it's been an amazing journey, and I want to start off by, I know you've heard me do this a million times, but I will never stop because I truly mean it. Thank you, every single one of you, whether you were here from the beginning or you just joined yesterday or discovered the show. If you've been a fan of the series at all and enjoyed it in any way, shape, or form, thank you so much for all of your support. And I've been wanting to do a lot of things kind of in these last 4 months, ever since we premiered the series finale at Anime Expo and then put it online and everything, and back in July. I've been trying to do a lot of things, kind of showcasing behind the scenes things and just doing anything I possibly can to give back to all of you who have supported me and all of my crew, all the cast and crew and everybody who helped make the show possible in any way that I can. So I've decided to do this little Kirblog as kind of a sort of retrospective, a bit of a look back on everything, and tell the complete story from beginning to end of how the show came to be, how it is, what it is, and everything from beginning to end. And so this is going to be kind of a free form. Might be very long. Hey, I might even be the longest Kirblog ever. I don't know. I've just hit the record button less than 2 minutes ago, and we're going to find out. But this will be a very chillax, laid back one. So this will be just for obviously the most hardest of the hardcore fans that want to know all of this. And I've probably mentioned a good majority of things about this whole story from beginning to end in various commentaries and other Kirblogs, behind the scenes things and stuff like that. So I apologize ahead of time for probably what would be a lot of repeated information, but I figured having it all kind of tied together in one place here would be something nice for everybody, and I hope you all enjoy it. So let's get started. I guess it all began well over a decade ago, and I was still in middle school at the time. Mike Lucas, my best friend, who is still my best friend to this day, had moved away. We went to school together from late elementary school and onward, all the way through college. And Mike, for some circumstances, of his own life, had to move away to New Jersey for about 2 years. And so he and I were keeping touch with each other over the internet. By that point, I had already, I had been Kerbifer for at least 3 years or so. I had invented that screen name when I was 12 at a babysitter's house. I've told that story on one of the first Kirblogs I ever did. But and he was Ultimate Creature the Second at the time, and we were, just keeping in touch over AOL Instant Messenger and things. And around that time, I can't remember exactly how I came across it, like what led me to it at first. I want to say that it might have actually had something to do with searching for something related to new Pokemon episodes at the time. Because I think that Pokemon Advance hadn't even started yet, or was close to starting at that time or something. But either way, I came across this little website called TV Tome, which has now been defunct for many years. It's been transformed into TV.com by its creator, John Nestoriak, who Webmaster is more or less based on, not in personality, but at least in namesake. So I found this website, and I came across the message boards. It was the first time I had ever done anything socially on the internet, was going to this forum, and it was the Pokemon section of the forum, because basically TV Tome was kind of like Wikipedia before there was Wikipedia, and it was just for TV shows and movies and things. So every single show or movie or whatever had an article and it had a message board to go along with it, and there was also like a users lounge and different things like that kind of mixed around. So I was going through this website, and I was discovering a lot of information, funnily enough, about voice actors, because I was beginning to discover that a lot of the actors that I had heard in all the different shows I was growing up with were in a lot of the same things, and I was beginning to recognize them a lot more. So then I was starting to look up information about who they were and everything, because they all had articles as well. This was, of course, well before behind the voice actors, anything like that. So this great website was like, oh, this is so cool, and I was just living on there for a while keeping in touch with Mike and continuing onward through school and everything, So I was showing it to Mike Lucas while we were talking over AIM one day, And eventually he made an account and he was kind of checking out the whole area. And it was on that forum that we met just about all of, I would say like 95% of the people that the characters in Tome were based on. For the most part, how it kind of started was, because Mike and I were always creating, characters and coming up with ideas for stories and things. And at the time, we were really big into the idea of like, the internet being like a cyber world of like, connecting people from all over the world and everything. And it was so crazy and cool and unique. And of course, .hack and Mega Man Battle Network, or rather Mega Man NT Warrior, were kind of going on at that time, and we were very intrigued by that. So this forum, this message board on the internet that we were going to when we were still young teenagers, was this kind of like this magical wonderland of like fantasy, and I guess in a way, maybe more so to me, but it was a place where we made a lot of friends at the time, and sadly we haven't really kept in touch with any of them in many 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 years. I'm sure that they're all kind of still scattered around the internet in some way. But when we were on there, this was a message board with no images. We didn't have avatars or signatures or anything like that. No pictures whatsoever. Photobucket was kind of, I think, in its infancy at that time, because this would have been like, I don't know, 2003 or so. And so basically we were artistically inclined and we wanted to draw stuff and come up with things. And this, we were getting very, very emotionally attached to, this message board and everything. So we came up with this idea kind of collectively. This is kind of where like the Jack Kirby, Stan Lee type of thing comes up. Cause like, I don't fully remember who came up with what in certain cases, but I remember we were starting to draw character designs based on what we thought everybody's screen name would look like. So, Flame Girl, I had, kind of like an anime looking sort of superhero girl, and everything, and, with like fire and red, type of clothing and everything. Game Crazed, I'm not entirely sure why I had this idea of like, I don't know, some kind of like purple shadow creature thing, but, just kind of came out as I was coming up with ideas. Our friend Colin, who we went to middle school and high school with, had come up with the name Nylock, as it was Colin spelled backwards. And, we kind of just created some sort of weird, like, Dragon Man character out of that. Of course, the personality was very different compared to, how it was later. We just came up with all these different characters. And then from there on out, we sort of invented this sort of story, taking various elements from the .hack and Battle Network sort of things. And also things that were happening and unfolding at the time on the forum. The transformations and as well, that was all just us kind of like playing around and making a story out of it. I don't know. It just felt like we were living in some kind of like weird fantasy story or something, and we were really owning it and making a big thing of imagination out of it. I don't know. It's again, it's really hard to describe, but that's just kind of what was happening with it, more or less. And, it was continuing onward for a long time. And as we were continuing to get closer and closer to all these people that we met. And so we decided one day, when we had all these different character designs and ideas and things, we kind of came up with the story. I started writing out an outline for what I thought was going to be some kind of comic that we were going to do together. I wrote like a whole giant, outline of all these chapters and all these different events and things that were going to happen, and where each of the characters were going to go. And that original story was completely different from any other, because obviously people who know where I'm kind of going with the story, they know that what happened with TV Tome Adventures and Tome as it was, but this version of the story, this very first one, and I unfortunately I don't have any remnants of it anywhere anymore, but it was completely different from anything else that we had. There were a lot of vastly different things. There were a few events that I think carried over, but for the most part, it was entirely its own thing. But anyway, yeah. So we went through this whole thing, and then it ultimately just ended up not really going anywhere, but we still had the characters and we had these ideas and we wanted to do something. So a fair amount of time had passed. It had been at least a full year, and we flash forward to the summer of 2004. By this time, Mike Lucas had moved back home. He was actually staying with me and my family for a little while, as his family was in the process of getting back to Long Island, and we were hanging out a lot of the summer. And that summer, I was taking a course at this place called My Computer Learning Center in New York. In my hometown, Long Island. Separately from all this, by this time, I had become very intrigued by all the Flash animation stuff that I was seeing on Newgrounds from people that I would later go on to work with, like the Zerbs brothers and the Super Flash brothers, Legendary Frog, a lot of people like that. I was kind of seeing all their early stuff on Newgrounds at the time, and was very taken aback and very interested. And I was like, oh, I want to do this. Like, because I had always dreamed, of course, of making, my own cartoons and movies and games and things. And, I was just so hypnotized by, like, you can just get a program and, like, make stuff like that. I had been doing, like, PowerPoint cartoons. I used very heavy quotation marks on that because they were just like still pictures kind of tweening around. And I met a lot of people who have done that as well, at different points. They were like, oh, this is the closest thing I could do to making games and movies and things with just like crappy MS Paint pictures and clip art and, all that kind of nonsense. But once I got Flash and learned how to use it, suddenly the whole world, this whole world of like, oh my God, I can make anything, kind of opened up for me. And so what happened was, Mike Lucas, who was taking the class with me, I had taken him along with me just to kind of like see it and learn some different things along with me. We started making sprite sheets for all of the TTA characters, this TV Tome Adventures story that we had come up with before. And we were thinking about, like, can we do something with this? Like, can we actually make some kind of like tangible story thing out of this? And so we did, and we started collecting together all these sprites. And at the time, we were also hanging out a lot on a forum called the Fallout Shelter, which I want to say it might still exist somewhere, but I'm not entirely sure. But either way, it's that was up, and that was kind of the place that we had sort of migrated to after TV Tome. We also had this other forum that we created for ourselves called Nintopia, which has long since been erased, but it was just kind of our own personal hangout area, I guess you could say. But anyway, so we went there, and we were just kind of getting enveloped in the whole world of like sprite comics and animations and things like that. By that time, I had also made an account for myself on Newgrounds. I only had a couple minor things I had done. I did Inuyasha in a Nutshell, which was absolutely gross and embarrassing, and very derivative of the Nutshell cartoons that were happening at the time. And a little sprite movie called Mega Man vs. Plunger Man, which is just Mega Man versus Mario, and it was very stupid. But I did those two things, and they managed to get through the portal without being blamed by some miracle of Christ, probably just because they used pre-existing characters. And then I decided to just go ahead and start making this TV Tome Adventure story as a series of Flash cartoons using these sprites. I had some drawings that I had scanned for like the avatars. This was very like, kind of a ghetto sort of production. It was literally just me doing everything, and the only help that I had really was, Mike Lucas and a few of the forumers with making the sprite sheets and everything, because I wasn't the greatest at pixel art in the world. But yeah, as far as producing the episodes go, I basically just did them all entirely on my own, animation and tweening them around and doing everything. And so I started doing them, and that just became. I remember at that time, this would have been like fall of 2004, which was it's over 10 years ago that I did this. I did the first episode of TV Tome Adventures. I think it was sometime in August, if I'm remembering correctly, like late August. But I just put out the first episode, and it was an incredibly small niche sort of audience, but the episodes were going through, and basically I made that into my life and my free time. As every time I'd get back home from high school, I was in high school by this point, and I would just whip open Flash and I'd start making the episodes. I'd just work forward. I'd get a bunch of backgrounds. All the backgrounds were literally just taken from other pre-existing things, and I just made a story out of it, and I just kind of moved the characters around and did everything. And it was very bare bones. There was no voice acting or anything. There were just like some, sound clips of us, like, doing attack noises or whatever. That was it. It was like nothing. But I was doing all that for a long time, and it was just all I cared about was like making new episodes of the show and, telling the story. And I didn't care how many people saw it. I didn't care that like it didn't have a massive fan base or whatever. I was just doing it and completely enveloped in the idea of telling this ongoing story, because the biggest thing that I was always drawn to in terms of like creating stuff as a kid was, telling a long ongoing story with a lot of characters in a big universe that you could sink your teeth into. I've definitely talked about, again, a lot of the stuff I've all talked about already in many other Kirblogs and commentaries and things, but it bears repeating that is the thing that I love the most, is having a long ongoing, amazing, to me, story, whether or not it's amazing to other people or otherwise. But yeah, I was lucky if we'd get like, in the thousands of views for each episode as we put them up. And so we went through the whole thing and did a whole lot of these, and, went on for years, at least 2 or 3 solid years, I believe. When I got up to the the 30th episode, which was the season 1 finale of the TV Tome Adventure series, I decided to have that be my first foray into doing an entire animated sequence with voice acting. That was the first time I ever. Well, I mean, I'd done the Inuyasha in a nutshell and the what is it, the Mega Man versus Plunger Man thing. I had done that, earlier with like, a full like back and forth conversation of voiceover, but this was the first time I was telling like a real story with like a cast of people and not just like me and Mike doing everything, or like the people that we knew from the computer learning center that we went to and all that. I remember when that episode came out, I was really proud of it because I felt like it was the first like complete thing I had ever done, and I'm sure like looking back on it now, it's totally silly and weird and ridiculous, but at the time it was a big deal to me, and I really wanted to. I really wanted to like show my stuff and show everything that I learned and progress. And I was like, this is cool. Like, this is just so meaningful to me. And it was getting a little bit more attention from people on the Fallout Shelter forum and getting a little bit more, a few more views than we had ever had before on previous episodes. By that point, we had done like, the equivalent of the Net King battles and all that stuff. We had done all those things and everything. But so we did all that. And then we moved on and we were doing season 2 for a long time. And then eventually we were doing season 3, which I thought was going to be short and not going to be like that big of a deal. And I was kind of, more looking forward to doing the 4th and final season of the story, which was going to be like the all new material that wasn't based on any of the things that we'd done on the forum. It was all like new stuff that Mike and I had come up with together. But as a lot of my viewers who have followed me since those early days on Newgrounds for the last, decade know, I decided to not continue with the show after all, and it was for a number of reasons. For one thing, by that point I had done the first episode, or the first episode, but the first of the 3 Parody Rangers cartoons that I had done, and that got infinitely more attention than anything else I had ever done on Newgrounds before. It was the first time I ever got something that was on the front page, and it was a huge deal to me. And unfortunately, this is the sadder part of the story, is I became hypnotized by the prospect of popularity and a little bit of making money, but certainly not to the same extent as, where it is now, where like now I can make a living off of, doing what it is that I do. But at the time it's like, we get like $250 rewards or whatever for, per monthly reward or something on Newgrounds each month. But that aside, I was really taken aback by just how much more attention I was getting and how many more people were entertained and knew about Parody Rangers compared to TTA, which I had been doing for at least 2 years by that point, and I was so much more invested into it. But yeah, it changed everything, and so I finished up the 3rd season. And, it had an ending, it had a cutoff point, and there was definitely an intention to do more. But unfortunately, it just didn't end up happening. And I decided that I wanted to focus my efforts into stuff that was going to, help me grow myself as a brand, I guess you could say. I know that sounds very selfish, and it was completely selfish. And there are still a lot of people who were like, why did you never do season 4? We wanted to see what else happened. And I put up a lot of like concept art and character profiles and like ideas of like what was going to actually happen throughout the whole story. But, it was never told, and I've never had any intention whatsoever of going back and doing it. And I know that, probably skipping ahead a little bit, I know there's probably some people who are disappointed that like I never got to do the season 4 material in the form of Tome, which of course came way later. But, I just wanted to focus on the story that I wanted to tell and that I thought was interesting. But yeah, so we went through the whole thing, and then I want to say by like maybe early 2007 or late 2006, I can't entirely remember, but we finished up TTA. We put out the last episode, which was another one. All the season finales had been fully voice acted and not fully animated, but a lot more. I was experimenting with like real character animation and like tweening around like puppets and things like that. So, and admittedly, sometimes once in a while I'll go back and like watch a few of them, like the fully animated episodes. I can like I still have some fond memories over, and just that kind of like, this was how old I was, and this was where I was in my life at that time kind of reasons. But, it's they don't hold up. And often when I get messages from people, and they're very sweet and I appreciate it, but when I get messages from people asking like, where can I find the TV Tome Adventures episodes. I want to watch that, and I mean, you can find them. They're all on my Newgrounds profile if you go looking for them. They're not difficult to track down, but I don't recommend watching them just because like they do not hold up. Like, maybe you might get some like a laugh or two out of certain things, or like, there's a couple kind of, I guess, sort of cool fight scenes, but even then, it wasn't even my animation. It was all like the sprites that we derived from like, Mega Man Zero or whatever. It was a lot of Mega Man Zero edits of characters because they had the most range in terms of being able to do different attacks and things. But anyway, yeah, so we did that. We finished it up, put a cap on it. I remember doing a giant, back when WoChow existed ages ago, I remember doing like a special episode where I just answered a shit ton of questions from people about, oh, like what were you going to do in season 4 and how were you going to go about this and that or whatever. And, that was, it was what it was, but that's, I moved on and that was the end. And then, I went to college. And, by that point I was fully invested in knowing that I wanted to pursue doing animation and, being an animation artist for my career and, wanting to pursue my dreams of things that I had been doing far before anything that I had done on Newgrounds. But of course, at the time, I was still very much invested into that community and, wanting to really strut my stuff and show myself off as an artist and everything. And, so by that point, I had done the 3 original trilogy episodes, I guess you can say, of Parody Rangers, the Super Freaking Parody Rangers series, which had really taken off and put my name on the Newgrounds map, I guess you could say. But I was doing that, and then eventually, of course, the Parody Rangers movie, which took me a very long time to finish from beginning to end, and the parts that I'd split up with it and everything. But yeah, I had done that, and then eventually I was also, further tantalized by, oh my God, the video game parodies really get you a lot of attention because they're so easy to just grab people and do that. So, I'm going to do video game parodies now, which, of course, brought about the Nintendo collabs and Brawl Taunts and all that stuff, and all those different things. So I was doing that for many years while, going to college and everything. And then there was one year, I want to say that it was my second or third year of college at the School of Visual Arts. I was taking an anatomy class, and I decided that I wanted to draw this giant illustration of all of the characters that had ever been in TV Tome Adventures, including the 4th season that never happened. I'm not entirely sure what convinced me of it, but I remember I finished up my final assignment early, which, we had to like do these really detailed illustrations of bones and like a big skeletal system and everything, and I wasn't really enjoying it because it was a class that was important, but I wasn't appreciating it as much as I should have, which has made my art suffer, but that's a whole other subject in and of itself. But anyway, when I had some free time, I decided that I wanted to work on this illustration. I had a giant space to do it, and I had this big ass piece of paper, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. So I laid out this giant illustration. I drew all of the characters on. I had this big, massive picture that I just drew everybody on, every single character with, Alpha and Zero, having like a locked fist, punch of like rivalry in the middle, all that typical anime bullshit. You can find that. I think it's called Massively Multiplayer Epic on my DeviantArt page. Maybe I'll have a link to it somewhere. But yeah, so I was doing that, of course, and I decided that, this would be cool, and I do really remember liking these characters a lot. What is it that I would do with them now? And so I did a few other pictures. I did these other, various illustrations of, the main 5 characters, kind of like figuring out, what would they look like? Like, how would I draw them today? And, what would I do differently with their designs? What would I do differently with their characters? And I'm trying to remember something about those early days, like when it was still in like its infancy. I remember I started thinking of like what the story would actually be, and I had like some very, very basic kind of ideas, and of like how I would take what it is that I had already in the TV Tome Adventure series. And so the story was kind of just like the new story of what eventually became Tome, Terrain of Magical Expertise, as you guys know it, was just like kind of various ideas floating around in my head. And of course, I should mention this. There was a stage in the idea process of me wanting to see if I could do it as a game. But before I get to that, I'm trying to assemble everything in the proper order, of course. Comic-Con San Diego, I believe in the year 2009. I brought this big sketchbook with me, and I was doing a lot of drawing that weekend. I was hanging out with a huge group of friends, like 10 different people that I was hanging out with, including Mike Lucas. Funnily enough, he was there, and Zach Blismo and Tara Billinger and a few other folks. And it was a wonderful weekend. It was definitely had some stress for reasons I won't get into, but it was a great weekend. And I can't remember exactly how it started. It might have just been like off the kick I was having from earlier that year in school. Very well, easily. Yeah, you know what? Actually, yes. I think that is exactly what it was. I think, you know what? Okay, yes. Now I'm realizing it was summer 2009, so that was just after my second year of college. So yes, it was my second year of college. I did that big illustration. I started drawing all the TV Tome characters again, and then that summer I started drawing like concept. And I if whenever I get to go back home, I want to see if maybe I can scan that stuff and finally put it up, because I've been sitting on it for over 5 years now. Maybe 6, I think, at this point. Jesus Christ. It was all this concept art and the original design sketches that I did for every single character in the show. All the main 5, all the side characters, all the hackers and everything. I think there were a couple that I didn't draw yet, and I designed them by the time that I got up to actually doing the show. But I came up with the designs for all of them, and I was really, really invested and really deeply like thinking about, like, man, maybe I could do this at some point. The following summer, by that point I'd just still been coming up with like various ideas. I wasn't really going ahead with anything, because by, in the middle of that time I was doing all the Nintendo collabs, and I was doing, early pre-production work on my thesis film, and wanting to finish up the Parody Rangers movie whenever I would have the chance and all that. So I was filled up with a lot of different things at that time, and it wasn't even something that was on the table. But the following summer in 2010, I was still working at this one place called Eduware. It was a company that I think I've talked about it maybe a couple times before briefly, but it was a place where I was kind of their general in-house like graphic designer, animator, video maker, game designer. I was doing a lot of different things for them, for this small little company just in Long Island that was doing educational software, and I was coming up with different things for them, different graphics and games and things like that for their software. And there was a programmer there. I unfortunately can't remember his name, but he and I got along really well, and he was kind of giving me the tools to put together some sort of platformer game. And I talked with him about, hey, dude, we should team up together and make some kind of game. So the first concept I had for actually putting the story out in some sort of tangible form, and I do still have that outline somewhere, I think, on my computer, but it was basically an outline for an episodic game. So what you guys remember as each individual episode of the show would have been an installment to this ongoing platform game, where it would have been, one episode would be like a couple levels and maybe like a boss fight or two, basically. And that's how it would have progressed forward. And I laid out, I want to say that I laid out like 20 episodes or so, maybe less, maybe more, I don't know, but around 20 or so episodes of, to install with this story idea. And I laid out like what would happen and where you meet these characters and when you'd play as who and how you do what. And the overall layout was similar enough to how the overall series went eventually when I made it. But a lot of the finite details and things that I was doing for, the character development in particular, and like the real personalities of everybody, that didn't come until I actually did the show and started writing episodes and everything. But that's going later. So 2010, I was first kind of formulating that, and but what I was mainly focusing on, of course, was doing my thesis film, Balancing Act, which was the final thing that I had to do in preparation for finishing up college. So I was doing that, and then also at the same time, I wanted to finish up the Parody Rangers movie, which I had done and I'd finished in 2010, and then also the third Nintendo collab, which was the final one of that series as well. A lot of trilogies of things I was doing, obviously. Brawl Taunts as well, but we don't talk about that. Anyway, so I did that, and then I was showing off some of the ideas and the drawings to different people, and I was like, I'm kind of thinking about this and gonna see if maybe I can do this. I don't know, and there were a few other differences and other things that I was doing with it and all that, but I think the basic beginning, middle, and end of the full story that I had planned out was actually pretty close to the vision that I had on the series. A lot of the key events. I think definitely by that point I had decided to have Kerbifer and Zeto be the same character, and having Game Crazed and Softy, who was still Motherboard at that time, to be the same character as well. and how the layout of the characters are going to be, and the hackers and everything, and etc. All that stuff. I had all that planned out pretty much from the beginning. And so college finished up. I finished my thesis film. I was out of school, and I was like, all right, well, now what am I going to do? And it's funny because even back then, and this would have been like spring or early summer of 2011. I was going through something kind of similar to what I'm going through now, where it's like, well, I finished up one big project, and now what the hell do I do? Like, what am I going to do next? I have no idea. And so after that point, I started doing some freelance things. I was doing a little bit more voiceover work, and I was doing stuff for Skullgirls, of course, and so I didn't really know what to do. And then I started thinking about, like, well, what if I did this tome idea, this TV tome adventures thing, or the tome Advent, I think was another idea that I had for the title. I was thinking about, like, what would I do for this? And this next part I know I've talked about many, many times, but it always bears repeating, because one of the main people that you have to thank really for the show going ahead and being made in the first place is Liz. Liz Losey has just moved to Indiana at the time after going through some pretty rough shit in her life, and she and I were getting to know each other finally, and really like spending a lot of time together and talking and everything. And I was telling her a little bit about this idea that I had, and showing her a lot of the characters and the different ideas and things. And she was like, "You should just do it. You should do it. Like, why not? Go for it." She was kind of what my equivalent to what Takahata 101 was to Team 4-Star when they were thinking about doing Dragon Ball Z Abridged. It was just like, do it. Why not? Just do it. So I made a game plan, and then what I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe it was Hurricane Irene had hit New York at the time, so I went through a power outage, and so I didn't really have much internet, I didn't really have much electricity at all, but I used any energy and any resources that I had whatsoever to start writing and drawing and creating. So throughout the summer of 2011, I started creating all of the assets, all the sprite animations for all of the main characters, and Raccoon and Doubling, and any background characters I needed for episode 1 of Tome. And those of you who have seen the recent animation reel of all the sprites and everything that I put up this past week, that was all the stuff that I was making. Not all of it, but like everything that was necessary for the first episode, I had finished and put together in that time. And I spent, particularly during the time that the power was out throughout all of Long Island, and that summer when Irene had hit, I was writing. I wrote 8 episodes. That I know I've went over many times in the commentaries, and then of course we added episode 4 to the mix later, and then everything got moved up by a number, blah blah blah. You know the whole story. But I wrote those 8 episodes, including, I remember particularly episode 2. I was writing in the dark. On a piece of paper with like candlelight, the script for the scene where Alpha and Kerbifer and Nylok go to the mansion where Astarob has built and everything. And then I also remember, I think I was writing what became episode 5, but was episode 4 at the time, where Zeto and Kizuna as Tiger Lily show up for the first time, and really being proud of that one. Still one of my favorites to this day. So I had all those. And then I started to assemble a team of people to help me out with doing it. So by that point, I knew I wanted Shady for the voice of Alpha, and we had worked together a fair bit for the last year or so, and had gotten to be friends. And so I approached him with the part of Alpha, and I also wanted him to sing the theme song, which Kadjit I had wanted to work with as a musician for at least a year or two, I think, by that point, and because I loved his music on Newgrounds, and of course, as a lot of people who know the soundtrack know, a lot of the songs that I heard from him originally later went on to be tracks in the actual series. And I can still remember when I heard the title screen theme of this game project he was working on that never went anywhere, called The Dimensional Force of Oxnard. I heard the title screen theme, and immediately I was like, I am going to write lyrics to this, and I'm going to make this into our theme song. And I wrote Battle On that day when I heard that song. So from the very beginning, it was an incredibly small crew. It was me on animation and all the main stuff. Shady on sound effects, mastering, playing alpha, of course, and singing the theme song, which we had put together by that point. Kadget to do more of the music that was needed, most of which was stuff that he had already given me, but I had him compose a few new tracks for the very first episode, just to use for, going through everything. And, so I was doing that. Of course, we had Terrence Lipinski and David Smith doing background artwork. And then later, by the second episode, we had Jordan Lasco join in as well on that, and she's been fantastic. And then, who else was there even? Of course, Liz was just kind of the general, before she was the script supervisor, which happened later on in the season. She was just kind of my sort of general assistant in, overall on the show. But, and then of course we had our cast, which, Martin Billany we had on Nylock, which, once I finally realized that he was perfect for that part, it was a no-brainer, and I had him on board. Of course, for Flame Girl, we had an audition. That was how I discovered Anna, or rather, I knew of Anna, and she auditioned, and then she got the part, of course. I had Casey Modulo on Game Crazed, knowing full well that where Game Crazed's character was going to eventually end up with, becoming Softy, and Casey, was perfect for that as well. And then, of course, Devin Mack and Edward Bosco playing our first two bad guys, Raccoon and Doubling, in that first episode. So that was it. That was everybody. We just went forward, and I put together the first episode. I spent like as much time as I possibly could on it, and it was my everything for a solid several months. And I decided all right, I'm going to go for it. And Newgrounds at the time, Tom Fulp was very kind enough to offer some sponsorship money. We had a $1,000 budget for the first 4 episodes of the show. I can definitely admit that at the time, and I'm sure the others can probably, even agree with me on this. At the time that I was working on the first episode, by that point I had been very, very ingrained in the sort of Newgrounds community, but I didn't really feel like a sense of belonging to a lot of the other animators and creators and things on there. And, by that point, unfortunately, YouTube was already beginning to sort of take over, and a lot of folks were kind of migrating over to there because that was where people were able to make a lot more money with ad revenue and everything. And but now, that's just kind of how it is, completely. And Newgrounds doesn't have nearly the same sort of draw to it as it used to, which is a shame. And it's not their fault at all, really. It's just kind of how this sort of thing evolves with internet entertainment, I guess you could say. But either way, I definitely wanted to feel part of something bigger, and I thought that having an original series, finally doing the type of thing that I'd always really wanted to do, making an original series with characters that I created and not doing any more parodies or spoofs or whatever, with characters that I didn't make and profiting off of them, finally leaving that stuff behind me and going back to what it is that I really wanted to do ever since I was a kid. It felt amazing. And really kind of remnants of that, that in-club mentality that I guess I was kind of striving for, or whatever. It was stupid, was that I had a lot more Newgrounds-related people that I wanted to have in the cast at first. There were a few people that were lined up for certain characters, but they ended up not eventually really being in it because they were too busy or they just couldn't do it at the time. There were only a few that ended up actually being part of it, of people like Happy Harry and Yuki no Joe, guys like that. And Chris O'Neill and Zach Haddle, which was kind of a whole nother story in and of itself. But so I don't regret where it went because it became much more about just, no, this is what I want to do. It's not about who approves of me or who likes me, or if I become more renowned by my colleagues or whatever that I'm trying to impress. It's who gives a shit? That's not what this is about. I'm doing something that makes me happy. I have a wonderful crew of people that are willing to help me. And then especially by the time we started the second episode, we opened up for the first time, allowing people to donate and get background characters in the show to decorate the world with different people. And that was amazing because we had this whole giant, scape of people, all this giant world to decorate with all these different characters and everything. And that was awesome. There were so many people who wanted to be part of it. And even more so later when, of course, we did the crowdfunding campaign for season 2. So I'm very, as I always say, I'm so incredibly grateful for that. But I was going back a little bit, so I'm kind of jumping all over the place. I apologize for that. But so we premiered the first episode of Tome at YomaCon 2011 in Detroit, Michigan, and I believe that year I was able to actually go as a guest, which was a huge honor, and I was able to do my Kerberfer's Flash Extravaganza panel that year, which was awesome. And so we had a panel, and actually I remember this too. At the time, I was working on another project that I was it was kind of like in competition internally with myself for Tome, because it was something else that I thought actually might have. And you know what? It's very possible that this might have been an even bigger thing for me than I originally thought. But what I was going to do was actually a review show that I was going to pitch to thatguywiththeglasses.com at the time, which is now just Channel Awesome. And Doug himself, Doug Walker, actually even really liked the idea. It was going to be a show called Frame by Frame, which of course now, the folks at the Film Theory channel have kind of coined, but, separately from this, they didn't really even know about this. It was going to be a review show of Kirblog, the character that you know from Tome, as an animated character reviewing animated shows and movies and things like that. And I wrote and animated and recorded everything for the first episode, which was going to be covering Doug, the Nickelodeon series. And I had 8-Bit Mickey from Channel Awesome at the time helping to do the editing. And that first episode was, I want to say, like 99% done. We just had a couple minor tweaks that we had to fix around. But yeah, it was like almost done, and we were going to pitch it, and the people that were running the site and everything were really interested in everything. But unfortunately, or I guess rather fortunately, it didn't go anywhere, because I think the original intention, and you guys would think I am insane for thinking this, but I think my original intention was that I was going to get one episode of Tome done every month, and one episode, and maybe like, cohesively one episode of Frame by Frame done every other month. And then eventually I decided to just not bother with Frame by Frame. I just kind of left it alone, and we didn't bother with it. And then I just focused entirely on Tome. But I still thought at the time that I was going to be able to get an episode done every month. And at first I really believed that, because we did the first episode, we put it out later that, about a week later after the convention was over, on November 11th, 2011 at 11:11 in the morning. And even though I think I had the mentality at the time of like, all right, well, who knows if this will go beyond just the first episode, I have no idea. I was so already invested by that point and in love with these characters and wanting to tell this story that I just went right on ahead with it and just decided to do it. And, I hadn't stopped. I mean, there were breaks at different points in between episodes and things, but overall, I decided to continue onward with it. And, that's just how it went. But yeah, so we went forward with it. And then I remember also, not long after, we premiered the first episode in late November, of 2011, I went to go visit California for the first time, because I was trying to get used to the area and look into, possibly moving out there. Edward Bosco had been living there for a little while. Kira Buckland was just in the process of moving back there after she had moved back home for a little while and everything. And Devin Mack was with us. And as I was getting closer and closer to Mac and Bosco, for instance, I decided that I wanted the two of them to be, a little bit more of a part of the show. So that's when we came up with the Hacker short, and I did that. We recorded and put it together and edited and did everything necessary for that short. That when we were like just there in California, we were staying at Edward Bosco's house. And funnily enough, I also met Sarah Williams, who would later go on to be Saturn Diva in the show, because we were staying at her place at the time. So we did that, and then we continued forward, and I managed to get episode 2 done before the end of December. I think at the very tail end of December. So I was like, yeah, I can do it. I can finish each episode per month. And then by that point, obviously, a lot of people who were following it from that early on when it was on Newgrounds know that I got some not so great, not very favorable reviews from a lot of other animators, including Chris O'Neill and Zach Haddle, the Hellbenders guys, for those first 2 episodes. And, it was like, oh, God, I don't know what I'm doing. So eventually, after, I and both of them kind of went back and forth and were sort of tussling over some things, eventually we kind of, reached a point of camaraderie and we're like, all right, like, clearly there's good intentions behind this. So, we apologized to each other. And then they were, particularly Zach, gave me some direct, not to discredit Chris too. Chris was very supportive, but Zach also, he gave me, some different pieces of advice and things that I could do to make the show better. So I took a little bit of a break, and then eventually I finished episode 3, I want to say sometime in March, I think, of 2012 of that following year. But definitely around that time, I think I guess it would have been spring of 2012, I was beginning to have a lot of doubt in myself. I was losing focus and control and like, my confidence in like if this was the right thing that I had tried to do. And so we continued onward, and then around that time we added in the idea for episode 4, and I worked on that, and that was the last one that Newgrounds was going to be able to sponsor as well. So I worked on that episode, and we conceptualized that one. Of course, it's Fragged Quest. We conceptualized that one as if it might have been the final episode of the show, because I didn't know if we were going to be able to continue forward, even though we had the sort of pre-tournament and then actual Gemini tournament arc episodes up until 9 written out already. By that point, I just wasn't sure if it was going to continue to go on. So we finished episode 4, and then there was kind of a crossroads, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't know what's going to happen next. And then, it might be incredibly self-indulgent to say, and I think I might have said this before too, in like somewhere, I don't remember where exactly, like some commentary or something, but Zeto showing up in episode 5 felt very self-indulgently empowering to me, because Zeto was like this kind of, Kirblog was like this sort of joke, like the kind of like that goofy, angry, like, cartoon character that sometimes people, I guess, perceive me as or whatever. And then Zeto was kind of that more cool, confident, like badass, like I'm going to do the right thing no matter what it takes kind of side. And I think I was just very like selfishly kind of motivated of like, I want to get up to that point, but I'm really glad that I did, because even beyond my own kind of like, proverbially jerking myself off with that whole kind of thing, getting to those following episodes, especially episode 6, which came afterward and had the scene with Nihilok talking in his real voice for the first time, and then everything after that with episode 7, which Liz really helped make shine with the revisions and things that she did. That was going a whole year later, by 2013, by the time we got up to that stuff. But yeah, I'm really glad that everything turned out the way that it did, because I think that getting to that point with everybody's help and moving forward and reaching the point of where a lot of all the 5 main characters in particular reached a very massive point of development in their personalities and everything, I think was huge, and I was very, very, very glad that we got to have all of that together, more or less, and especially because it created a lot of the biggest scenes that people grew on to really enjoy in the viewership and everything. So even though maybe like there was a point of like self-indulgence and like me thinking about myself, like I was once again getting back to that point of like showing my stuff and just, strutting like, oh, look at how cool I am or whatever, which I tried not to ever like fall into that, and I try to keep myself tempered and everything, because I did the Kirblog about self-insert characters with Kirblog and Zeto, and I wanted to differentiate them, but from me as a person, and they're definitely different enough from me, but like at the same time, like it's very much the whole show, especially like Kirb/Zeto's arc, but the entire show was a self-expression. It was something that was always basically there for me, in a time of, if I was ever feeling like in kind of a dark area of any kind, whenever I was going through anything really bad, I could always, Tome was always there for me. It was always something for me to fall back on and, envelop myself in and just completely go 110% on. And, I tried to, having all of you guys and gals and everything in between, all of you who enjoyed the show out there, and supporting it and wanting to see where the story was going and wanting to see everything continue. Like that was a huge point of motivation for me to keep going, because I wanted to present a satisfying experience to everybody. I wanted to give the experience that I was looking to see, and I was looking to have myself and, have everything come out of that and all. And, I didn't want to just leave it unfinished. So I carried onward. And then, so kind of going back a little bit, rewinding, we had another Youmacon later that year, 2012, which was a wonderful weekend, because we went to go see Wreck-It Ralph, me and so many different people that I cared about all in that room together. We went to go see that movie at the Detroit Convention Center, wherever it was. I think it was the Marriott, where they had a movie theater built into it. We saw that movie, and we had the panel. We premiered Tome episode 5 on the big screen to people, and continued onward. And then later, the following year, when 2013 started, I had 2 cons in a row that I premiered episode 6 at, which was a big deal. And of course, we had the auctions for all people to donate and get their little cameo characters in and everything. And then I continued onward throughout the year, and then I managed to finish up the entire rest of season 1 within 2013. And there were a lot of rough patches and a lot of hurdles and obstacles that I had throughout that time that were really difficult. A lot of things going on in my personal life that were really, really hard for me to contend with. And I just, again, Tome was kind of the thing that I held solace in and was really proud of, and and had something to just like feel like I had a sense of purpose. So it's part of the reason why, no matter how it turned out, the fact that just anybody cared, anybody gave enough of a shit to want to watch this show, and who were invested emotionally into the story, and who identified with the characters at all of you who contributed. And I don't just mean like those who like donated or did fan art or whatever, like just contributed by just enjoying and caring at all about the show. Like, all of you are probably the single biggest reason collectively as to why the show continued onward, and why eventually, when I got to 2014, I decided to do the crowdfunding campaign for season 2, and somehow in the span of a full year, I was able to get all of season 2 finished, and I was able to tell the entire rest of the story that I set out to tell in the first place. That is all because of you guys and the motivation that you gave me. And and I have, of course, my entire crew to thank. They were all there for me through thick and thin, from beginning to end. And without their support and dedication and everything that they did for me, then the show wouldn't have been made. It wouldn't have been able to be what it is that you know it for now and what you've seen. So I all of them, everybody that ever did anything for the show and helped me, complete this vision of mine that I held to for so many years. I owe all of you, everybody listening to this, everybody who is part of this, I owe you all absolutely everything. And the kind of ultimate culmination that came of it, and we told a lot of stories about it on the final episode commentary, me and all the main cast, but I really, really, really wanted to get not only another public screening, but I wanted to have all of the main cast be there for showing off the finale, and have it be like, a great experience for everybody, for us, for me, for the viewers, for everybody. I wanted it to be something that was worthwhile, that would be a massive payoff. And I owe, in that case, thanks to Ben Diskin for hooking me up with the people who run Anime Expo, that I was able to do the panel and get the screening and do our autograph session and everything. And yeah, as a result of that, we had a full room, and it was definitely not like, this gigantic, like, stadium worth of an audience, but the people who were there to see the final episode on the big screen of that panel on Sunday morning were just a bunch of the most amazing people ever. And even the day before that, when we did an autograph session, we maybe had like 15 people at most show up, like, in total, but there was a mom and her like 2 kids that came in who were wonderful. I think they've posted on the Facebook a few times. Thank you guys for reaching out. And I believe there was a guy who like flew out from Ireland like that weekend just to be there and like see all of us and get our autographs and everything. And I was able to show a great weekend to Shady and Anna and Casey, and Mac and everybody who was there, all the cast members who were there for it. They were incredible, and I was able to show them a good time that weekend while they were there visiting. And and then it was all worth it when we showed the final episode, these 4 years worth of work, culminating into this final thing. And the show is definitely not a massive work of art. It's got a lot of very basic flaws and a lot of things that, probably could have done better. A lot of maybe, even advice that I could have taken and changes I could have made to make it better. I was very stubborn about my vision and really wanted to do it the way that I wanted to do it. But doing this show, for better or worse, in however way it turned out, for all of its flaws and, for however much success that it got, all of it was so incredibly beyond, like, meaningful, satisfactory, just emotionally moving. I mean, that screening, we all watched the episode probably like 3 times over the course of that whole weekend, all of us together, and we, the screening, we were all crying. It was this massive, amazing experience, and then even on the final day when we were all hanging out at the hotel and we were just eating the cake that my neighbor Lauren made for us, all of us, which we showed that video on the Facebook page if you haven't seen that. And just that whole entire thing, it made everything worth it. It made the entire journey, all the hardships, all the difficulty and everything. It made everything so amazingly beyond worth it. And I owe all of you so much for that. And here we are, here we are 4 years later to the date, from putting out that first episode of me just taking this risk and doing everything. And I really think about it. I really try to like stop and sit down and think about it. It's, even though there's probably a lot of like self-indulgence in like the way that I had the characters that were based off of me and, what I wanted to do and my own experiences kind of coming throughout that and everything. The way that the whole entire experience started was, kind of going full circle here is, my best friend moved away and I wanted to keep in touch with him. And, Alpha was, even though he's very, very different from how Mike Lucas is, Alpha was based on Mike Lucas and Kirblog was based off of me, and they were best friends, and Mike is still my best friend after all these years. All of the stories that I tell, the ones that I want to tell, including like stuff that I haven't even been able to make yet, self-indulgently, they're all about my life experiences and my friends and the people that I love who have treated me well and that have made me feel really special. Mike is a person, he's one person of many, but he's like my family who, have really changed my life and taught me so much about life and helped me grow as an individual. And, I'm 26 at this time. I think maybe 27. I don't remember. I legitimately don't even know. I'm old now. Congratulations. I don't remember how old I am. Anyway, the point is I'm an adult, but I'm still learning so much. I can never stop learning, and I continue to make a lot of mistakes. I'm a massive fuck up, and most people that know me personally know that. I still continue to this day to do a lot of stupid things, and I've hurt people, I've done dumb things, and this is not a fucking sob story. I'm not looking for fucking sympathy or whatever, but just, I'm human, and making something like this and showing off my creative ability and just putting it into some sort of self-expression through a show like this and trying to pay tribute and give back to the people that inspire me and who I love and who love me. It's my way of living. It's and not like, yes, monetarily, but just exist. It's my way of existing. It's my way of like knowing that I am who I am and that I love to do what I do and that I exist for this purpose. And what I try to do also is, one of the main major things that I've learned in, these last 4 years of making this show is that, it's really all about the impact that you leave on other people. And, I'm so incredibly grateful the most for, any time that anybody, including even people on the crew, like, the folks that, that worked with me on the show, I'm so incredibly grateful whenever somebody tells me that the show affected them in a positive way, that it was, anything as simple as like, oh, that scene with the campfire where they're all talking and they really establish how great friends they are, even though they just met each other over the internet and they're just playing a video game, or that scene where Nilok was finally like owning exactly who he was and, and he was finally being honest with himself and to Game Crazed and everything. And, or that moment where, this character was revealed to be this and, why this character was doing this and everything. And, anytime anybody would ever tell me that, and then they would tell me that it was something that they related to very much and it was very powerful and emotional for them in any way, shape, or form, that means so much to me beyond even any description I could ever give. And it should be, if anything, the point of what it is that I do. And that's not to be like, preachy, like, we all have to teach everybody a lesson with what we do. But I've grown up always loving stories that you walk away with some kind of lesson from, having anything that you can take away from, even if it's something negative, or even if it's like a tale of like, don't do this, which, I have stuff like that too. If anything, I kind of tried to make Kirblog and Zeto be a cautionary tale of like, don't do this, while Alpha and, the others are kind of a more not a cautionary tale, but a tale of like, this is what happens when you have the support and the people to fall back on there. And, and stuff like, what we did with Raccoon even, and, what Mac did, and what Mac and Bosco kind of helped collaborate with me on to, and everybody who lent any kind of, support or anything whatsoever to that character's growth throughout the whole thing that came completely unexpectedly. It just kind of evolved, like stuff like that. And even, again, in that case, like that affected Mac very, very positively in how Raccoon ended up being like a gift to him that he has always been so appreciative to me for. And, like all of this stuff collectively, it's just 4 years of my life that I spent and I dedicated to this, that I tried to really do my best and to push myself and to deliver something that was satisfying to myself, to my crew, to all of you. It was all worth it. All of you, everybody, any of you who are listening to this, you all made it worth it. And I'm sorry that I'm kind of going off into tangents and going around in circles and whatever. That's an oxymoron. Whatever. I'm rambling, but I can't express it enough. I really can't. There's so much to this, and I guess I might as well say I was going to save it for another thing, but whatever. So at the time that I'm doing this, I know that I teased back in the panel that we recorded of the of the season finale and the series finale, that is, that I asked everybody, hey, would you like to see season 3, or would you like to see a game, or would you like to see both, or neither, or whatever. At the time that I'm doing this, I have no idea what my future holds in general. Right now, I'm once again at kind of I guess not so much a crossroads, but like a moment of I'm trying to figure out what's going to come next for me in general. Just like what happened with when I finished college and I wasn't sure of what I was going to do, and then eventually I had that push to just make Tome, and that was those 4 years was all of that. Of course, obviously lots and lots and lots of other things happened in those 4 years, but Tome was the guiding light that I had throughout all that time, and that I'm very grateful for. And I don't know if Tome is going to continue to be that, and I guess I'll just give some open transparency. I do have ideas for, there's no point in hiding it by this point, but I do have ideas for more stuff with Tome. The story that I told from these 16 episodes from beginning to end is the story that I set out to tell in the first place. It had the ending that I always wanted to. It had the ending that I wanted to give to TV Tome Adventures, the live action sequence with all them meeting each other in real life. I wanted to do that for the end of TTA, and had no idea how I would have ever been able to do that. And now, thanks to, again, all these amazing people in my life, I had the resources and the ability and the skill combined together, from learning from them and doing all this stuff. I was able to do that. I was able to make that vision happen in a way that I never expected would ever come about. And I do have ideas for something beyond that original vision, but I don't know right now at this time if anything relating to the terrain of magical expertise is the best route for me to go. Because I moved out to California to pursue my dreams of working in the animation business. And there's a lot more that I can do, and there's a lot of different things that I can do to push myself and do better and better and better with each thing. And I don't know if I just right now, I don't know what the best thing is for me. And that includes, this is just to be realistic. I don't know if, say, making another Tome season, which, yes, I do have ideas for that are fully fleshed out. And I appreciate all the messages of people giving ideas and wanting to contribute and everything. I really do appreciate that. I have an idea for it. I just don't know if spending another year on another X amount of episodes, however many there end up being, is the right thing for me to do next. Making a Tome game, I'm still learning so much, through the folks like at Cryamore or A Hat in Time or, Black Hole and the guys from Fiolasoft and all that stuff. I'm still learning so much about actually what it takes to make a video game. I have no idea if I'm even remotely ready to do that. If I were to do a Kickstarter and get a shit ton of money to do that, and then I don't want to, end up disappointing everybody, and because I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I don't know if even that's the right way to go yet, or if I'm even equipped enough to be able to do something like that. I don't know. I don't know what is going to come next and what is the best route for me to take. I'm involved with a lot of different things right now, with a lot of different projects. Pretty much as a result, almost all of them are as a result of the work that I did on Tome, and that I met a lot of other different people who were willing to be there for me and help me, and people like the Living Tombstone and the Nostalgico guys who were doing Cryamore, and all these different people, the Team 4-Star guys, all these different people who have been supportive to me and were impressed with what it is that I did on this show. Thanks again to all of you guys, and now I have some different things that might be up in the air, but they're in the hands of other people. And all I have kind of to myself right now is continuing to do freelance and continuing to produce stuff like this. And of course, I'm going to keep on doing Kirblogs, every week, as always. But yeah, I don't know. I can't say that I'm at a crossroads because I just don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I'll even admit there's a lot of fear. I'm afraid of what the future holds for me because I don't know what it'll be. I don't know if it's going to be the right thing or not. I have no idea. And, to be fair, I didn't know if Tome was going to be the right route to go when I started it, but I just went for it and I did it. I had that encouragement, and I have a lot of people still. I have even more people now encouraging me and being there for me, including, again, everybody listening to this. And, even the people who aren't listening to this, everybody has been so encouraging and amazing. And I'm still very grateful for all of that. But I don't know. Unfortunately, and I hate to disappoint everybody, and I admittedly, I was kind of hoping that by the time that I got up to this anniversary that I would be ready to, I don't know, give some kind of news. But I'll be totally honest with you all, I don't have anything. All I have are these words, this story, and my thanks. I don't know what the future holds for Tome because I don't know what the future holds for me. And, if something were ever to come up again with these characters, with this universe, with this story, with this world, and all the stuff that you guys have grown to love over the course of these last 4 years, I'll let you know. And when and if that day ever comes, I'll look forward to it myself, and I'm sure it'll be incredibly exciting. But I just don't know right now, and I don't want to end on like a somber note or anything. But I want to be honest with all of you, and but again, that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate all of the thoughts and the dedication and the want for more. The fact that everybody is like hoping that there might be something else, someday. And I really appreciate that. And I, whether it happens or not, just again, your dedication is amazing. And I can't thank you all enough. I've thanked everybody a million times, but again, I'll do it forever because I truly mean that. And yeah, so I have, I guess to kind of wrap this up, didn't break a record. Didn't break Ben Diskin's record of longest Kirblog ever, but we certainly went for a solid, amazing hour. And thank you all if you've listened to this far, and I hope you enjoyed this little kind of trip down memory lane and everything. So as we're wrapping things up, I'll just say I'm going to leave an annotation here that I wanted to share the thoughts of many other folks that helped make this show happen in the first place. So what I did was I reached out to as many cast and crew members as possible and asked if I could get just some thank you messages, some general thoughts from everybody who helped make the show happen. I was able to get as many as possible. Not everybody had the time or couldn't think of what to say, but I'll say on behalf of everybody right here that we all appreciate everything that that you've done and just all your viewership and your enjoyment of the show. But I'm going to let all of them tell you, everybody who had time and was able to, record a little thank you message from, all the cast and crew. So I'll have an annotation here. You can click on that and check out the video of all the thank you messages from everybody. And tomorrow, on the day of the actual anniversary, I'm going to have two special videos. The first of which is also thanks to not just the cast and crew, but thanks to all of you as well from the crowdfunding campaign. Those of you who donated and got some of the special the character voice requests from the Season 2 crowdfunding campaign. I got permission from a bunch of the donators to actually showcase a lot of the requests that people had of the actors doing different things in character and all that. And I assembled together a bunch of the coolest ones and the funniest ones and put them all together. And that's going to be a quick little video of just all those put together. I think you might find some enjoyment out of that. And also thanks to one of our guest musicians, Ivy Tran of Steven Universe and Cryomore fame. She arranged the little piano version of Battle On that we used for the very last scene in the last episode, the live action sequence of all of our heroes meeting up together in person. We had all that together, and she gave me permission to post up the tune on my channel, so I'll be putting that up. It's both of those videos that are going up tomorrow will not be monetized. I'm not making any money off of it whatsoever. They're entirely just a gift to all of you guys from us, the cast and crew, as well as the thank you messages that I'm linking to here. This is just a gift from all of us, from everybody who worked on the show, from everybody who were able to support the show monetarily, and otherwise. And again, anybody and everybody, no matter what you did, even if it was just as simple as watching the show, whether you enjoyed it or not, you have my infinite thanks. And while I don't know what the future holds, I hope that whatever it is maybe even bigger and better than Tome. And and that's not to put down what I've done for these past 4 years at all, because I'm still so proud of it. But the point is to push onward and upward and go forward, whether it's Tome related or otherwise. I want whatever comes next to be even bigger and better. And I just hope that you'll all stick with me and you'll all be patient. And as I continue to hopefully grow and learn and evolve as an artist, as a human being, as anything and everything. And so thank you so much for your dedication and support. That's going to wrap us up. So any comments or any final words or thoughts you'd like to leave about anything, please feel free. I'm sure as I always often try to do, I look through these comments and maybe I'll respond depending if there's anything else for me to say about particular subjects. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching, for enjoying, for anything and all that you've ever done on this. Thank you. And I feel it's only fitting we're about to approach 1 hour, 11 minutes and 11 seconds. So I'm going to draw this out just a little bit further. And so I know that there's not much more really for me to say, just for the sake of filling up the the time slot. But yeah, I mean, I hope you look forward to whatever it is, whatever comes next. And I hope that you can look back on the show and still enjoy it for all its flaws and for all of whatever it might have meant to you. If anything at all. If you have any particular memories to share about any point of the show, even back in the TTA days, anything at all that you want to share, let me know in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for absolutely everything, and I will see you all in the very, very near future. Goodbye.